All right. The
So,
real reason
yeah,
we're on here, Keith, let's talk about this roster.
yeah, I've got it up in front of me right here, man. Right here on the PC
So
here.
let's first talk about returning players, because to me, this is the most interesting piece of the puzzle for this team this year because of the new management group and because of the new coaching staff and the huge influx of Argentines, or Argies, as some might call them. What do you think about some of the returning players, and then maybe some names that aren't returning that you may be unsure of why that might be occurring?
So obviously, you guys can find the lineup. You got to think once again, Rick Collins for putting these all together. Um, so how about we just go the automatic one? Obviously, Carlo deciding that he was done and goes off to Houston. It's going to be a bit of a heartbreaker because the fact of the matter was that him and Adrian at 9 and 10 was probably our most potent combo all year at 9 and 10. Carlo was a great dude, can qualify for playing for the U.S. because he's been here long enough. And I don't have anything negative to say when I see him when they come through for that first home game. I'm going to greet him like he's my friend still. So that's probably to me possibly the biggest omission from last year that we don't have returning. I mean, you could say the veterans like Chris Pennell and Trender and those guys, but they were at the end of their careers,
Yeah, and in
honestly.
fact, one Trender was really basically coaching by the end of the season last year. So not a
After the
huge surprise
injury.
that he's not returning. I'm surprised we haven't really seen his name pop up as a coach somewhere. But
Yeah, it's
it seems it's got to happen at some point here pretty quickly, I would assume.
so like I wasn't as shocked about those omissions. And then, the summer kicks in. We all have a relationship with these players. We're hearing as they're getting cut one by one, being told, "Hey, I got cut today," and I didn't really I got it. I understood it was a new management group coming in. You've got to kind of clean the house, and the guys that they've brought back, I get it. Alex Tucci, I believe, was our most experienced Major League Rugby player on the entire roster. I think he's been in the league 4 years
Correct.
now.
Yeah.
He had a crap, he played a lot he played for Utah for multiple seasons, comes down here, um, really was probably our most veteran domestically made rugby player on the team as far as the front row went.
Correct.
And, played well, had some injury issues, obviously, found out how much better he was off the bench. So I was really excited when they said he's coming back. Obviously, he was my very first interview for any guy I ever did on the team last year. And, having him back is definitely going to be a good anchor on that front row. Because, I mean, I even went back and looked at the lineup of the starting game last year. He was starting beside two guys that had like 150 premiership caps between
Right.
them. So it was like he was the rookie on the starting front row,
Right.
basically.
Well, and
But
that's the interesting thing. You had these domestic players who played 5 years professionally in MLR, right? And probably 10, 15 years before that. But then you put him next to a guy who had played maybe a couple of years in premiership, but had played 20, since he was 4, right before
yeah,
that. And it's such a huge difference still. And so we're still in that building phase for Americans in American Rugby League, right? We're not, whether it's D1, D2,
yeah.
MLR, we're
We're
still
still
many
seeing
steps.
that most of the American players, they don't start playing until high school
Right.
at the earliest. Um, when we start seeing these guys that have been playing since like elementary school, that's when you're going to start. I think you'll start seeing the sea of change as far as the talent level in this country goes. But that takes time. That takes time. That's just
Yeah.
like anything else. It's just going to take time.
Well, and then you see, right, so the guys who are USA eligible who, don't count against our international cap, a guy like Carlo, um, obviously, look at the US national team, and I would say 75% of the players were not born in the United
No,
States. They were born
no,
elsewhere, came over here, whether it was a high school college or earlier. Hopefully MLR is going to help change that. And I think that's all our hopes. But right now, looking at a guy like Carlo, that seems really difficult to let him go when he's an U.S. eligible player on a roster. He's a talented young player. So that makes me think, one, they really like who they have at scrum half. But that also makes me think, who are the rest of the non-international slot players who are going to start, right? They can only have 10 of them start, according to the numbers that I've seen recently.
Yeah.
You can only have 10 international on the 23. So who are the other 13 players that are going to start that aren't? What would your guess be?
Oh, that's, I'm sitting here looking at that right now, and I didn't even think about that. It didn't even occur to me that
That was the first thing when I walked through the lineup. I'm thinking you could start an entire international team, and I wouldn't be mad with leaving off any of the U.S. or Canadian players.
Exactly, but we can't do that, unfortunately.
So how are you going to get a starting roster from this?
I'm still wondering, like I said, Rick, you've put this together with what information you have. I still think there's a lot of guys we just don't see on here that we don't know about.
I think there's at least 4 or 5 players that aren't on this list that are in camp already or making their way to camp. Who are part
that
of
are domestic players,
yeah.
that are domestic players. And obviously the one of the big ones that kind of made not really clickbait, but it was a really big one, and I even did a video about it, was Sean Clark being the largest wing to ever play rugby union at 6'9". I mean, this was international headlines. I mean, Rugby Pass picked it up, Ball Carrier Rugby picked it up. I had people asking me about him from like all around the world, like, hey, do you know this guy? I'm showing them a picture of him and my daughter with her little face, making a little funny face. And I'm like, yeah, I know Sean. And like, he's a solid dude. And he decided that, hey, look, I'm going to go do the Raptors thing, which I got no. You're going to go play.
There's plenty of MLR talent that decided to do that. Ryan James with LA Folding, he could have signed probably with any team in the league. I think the Jackals would love to have Ryan James back, but him going to the Raptors, where he's fairly comfortable in Colorado, and then an opportunity to play against international competition, that's hard to pass up.
I still think that the craziest part about the whole Sean Clark thing was, 6'9", you think lock. I don't think that guy should play lock. I think they should keep him on the wing just because of the pure freak show ability of it. But so we lose Sean Clark, who was a lock for us. Bronson Tellis decides to take a year off, obviously, with him.
I think that's hard because he was a glue guy for them this last year.
He was a workhorse.
He could play, 4 through 8 and fill in where he needed to fill in. I mean, the guy is so strong. I wouldn't be surprised if he could play front row. Not that he would ever want to. Not that I blame him for that.
Yeah. And just a super intelligent guy, obviously.
And a great guy, local family. So that's a heartache to lose him.
It was hard to see him go, but I get it. Like, unfortunately, Major League Rugby is not enough to pay the bills yet for a lot of these guys.
Not yet.
And I'm sure with him, it was just like, hey, look, I want to start my life, that kind of thing. So I don't have any problem with it. So we lose him. So that's 2 locks out. Lannertz, the Belgian-born player, we were there when that injury happened, man. Like, that was bad. Mm-hmm. Like, that was probably the injury that happened this year that, like, where I was like, that guy's in trouble bad. Like, it wasn't even, you knew there was no faking. He was hurt. And he gets injured. You see him start doing the rehab process. He's doing it throughout the summer. He's looking strong in the gym, and I guess they just never gave him a call. So that's another lock we're missing. And then we get to the other local product out of East Texas, a guy that I'm very, very close to, his family, very good East Texas people, and that's Sam Phillips, who did get cut in the summer. And, he's a young man. He played collegiate football. He did a little bit of coaching at the JUCO level a bit, and I went and saw him do that for a little while. And he's a personal trainer. I believe he's working out of the same facility as Brendan Rams is right now. And I guess my big question is if we don't have any locks, why are we not working this kid out?
Yeah.
That's just kind of my big question.
Yeah.
Like, why are we not working out Sam Phillips? Like,
it's really interesting.
Shape.
Now, what I've heard from talking to some of the players who were cut, that they have been told that the new management, I'm not going to go into specifics about what was said, but basically the new management is looking for more experienced players. They're not looking for crossover athletes that have changed within the last 5-6 years. They're looking for somebody
players.
with, if you're 25, you better have almost 10 years of rugby experience.
Which is going to be hard in America. You know, it's going to be hard.
That's the reason we got 13 Argentinians on the roster.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, look, you're going to have to look at, because Sean Clark was a crossover athlete. I mean, if you really look at it, Aaron Gray, Alex Tucci played collegiate football. He didn't play rugby. These are crossover athletes. I mean, I could say of all those names,
Tucci's been playing a little bit longer, and Gray was playing in high school. So, I mean,
Bronson Tellis played high school football.
Right.
Like, you know,
some of these guys are crossover, but they played rugby and they played football because football was going to get them the scholarship.
Yeah, to go to college.
And rugby wasn't. And so that's one of the biggest problems right now in the U.S. is there aren't scholarships really available to rugby players. There's a very limited amount, and you're not going to have an MLR draft with an entire draft class of varsity rugby players. I would say very few of them are going to be varsity, scholarship players. They're going to be players who walked onto a team or were, recruited to come somewhere, but they're paying full fee to go somewhere, full ride. So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges is finding those experienced American players. I think, part of what we see from the draft class from this year was guys that have played rugby for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely not a lot of guys that switched over in college. We'll say it's guys that switched over.
No, and that's the biggest difference, I think, between this draft class and last draft class. There were 4 or 5 guys that were basically crossover players in the last draft class. This year, I don't think any of them were.
Our number 1 overall, our first pick that we had, obviously, is that Sam
Gola. Mm-hmm.
I don't know a whole lot about his background. Do you know his background? Because I know he is a local product, right?
Gola? So he went to Cal Berkeley, but he is from sort of the area. Okay. But he's been playing, he was playing in Denver, at Denver East High School, where he was playing rugby. So he was playing as a freshman in high school. So, I mean, the kid's got lots of experience for a college graduate in the U.S.
This will be good to see.
And you look at Matthias Karamudi, the fly half from Thomas More, following, oh my gosh, our other Torres. Both of them were at Moore, and both of them had been playing for a long since they were kids in Argentina, obviously. But also, Ethan Hager's been playing for a long time in Canada. I think Fulton hadn't been playing quite as long, but almost everybody else had been playing forever. So not a surprise on who they picked based on experience. I would say the one thing that I was surprised is we didn't get anybody who's just like a physical wrecking ball this go around, which the last few drafts we had.
And I mean, like, when we think of American born and bred rugby players, he played for Austin, but I think Connor Mooneyham, I think when I want to think of an awesome American born and bred rugby player, that's usually kind of one of the first names that kind of comes out of your mouth, because that guy is 100% American-made rugby player. And he could probably play wherever he wants in the world, but he chooses to stay here in the MLR. And, you tip your hats to those guys, because now they have that option. Now our domestic players have that option. If they just want to stay here and play, they can stay here and play now. And, looking at this roster here and seeing some of these guys and thinking of how many of these guys have been playing since they were kids. And typically it's everybody who wasn't born here.
Exactly.
It's Herman Achenbach. He's been playing since he was a kid. DeWalt Kutsia, Dewey Kutsia has been playing since he was a kid. I'm pretty sure all the Argentinians have been playing since they were kids.